And let's begin with the word of prayer. Father, following your Son is what we do. It's how we spend our lives. We want to do what he wanted us to do your will. Please help us to see our duty, our privilege, and our desire to do your will and share your good news with the world, or even with just those people we come in contact with. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, last week we had the great discourse, which is the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Plain. Okay? Any residual questions from that? Anybody have anything thought left over from that? Remember how you could see Safat up on the hill up above you? And, okay? It's a nice place. Okay. All right. This one, we have two texts, sort of. Thank you. I appreciate that face there. We'll start with Matthew, and don't bother looking it up. It's Matthew 11:1. It reads, "When Jesus had finished giving instructions to his 12 disciples, he departed from there to teach and preach in their cities." Whoa! What happened to that?
There it is.
Thank you. Anyway, there it is up there. Why, that was weird. Okay, I don't mind being weird, I suppose. Anyway, it's a general, just a general thing. Any question about it? No. It's no big deal. However, the only place this story is in the Gospel of Luke. Only place. So, we're going to look for the Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, beginning at verse 11.
Do you want one of us to read our
Sure.
version?
And then we'll reread your version. Maybe from a translation.
Ooh, 7's long.
We have only go 11 to 17.
Okay. Soon afterward, Jesus went with his disciples to the village of Nain, and a large crowd followed him. A funeral procession was coming out as he approached the village gate. The young man who had died was a widow's only son, and a large crowd from the village was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart overflowed with compassion. "Don't cry," he said. Then he walked over to the coffin and touched it, and the bearers stopped. "Young man," he said, "I tell you, get up." Then the dead boy sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. Great fear swept the crowd, and they praised God, saying, "A mighty prophet has risen among us, and God has visited his people today." And the news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding countryside.
Okay. What can you tell me about this story? What about it is of interest to you?
Well, for one, it's in most cases when Jesus or somebody else brings somebody back from the dead, it's done in a private setting.
Yes.
And this was done in front of a crowd.
Yes. Yes, it was.
And oftentimes when Jesus does something, he'll say, "Don't tell anybody." But doing this in front of a crowd,
You can't get away with that.
yeah.
Yeah. Anything else about this particular story? Anything of interest to you?
Maybe.
Well, so we know a few things.
Yeah.
His mother was a widow, and in those days
young
that
man was a widow. His mother was a widow.
yeah, and in those days that meant she may or may not starve because she had no means of support without a husband or family.
Okay. Let's be specific with that.
Okay.
What do you mean, or family?
Well, I mean, if she had children, if she had an uncle or a cousin or someone else who would take care of her. But women didn't work outside the home.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So who would have to take care of her?
Well,
Person.
Her son,
yeah.
or any male person.
Yes.
Male.
Okay. That doesn't sound like a good idea these days, does it?
Not by our standards, but it was normal for them.
I let my wife work for me. If she goes to work, I stay home. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, anything else of interest here?
That the crowds were afraid when they saw this. It would certainly get your attention, but
Yes.
restoring life, should that make you afraid, or would you be afraid of the guy who had died and was sitting up? I don't know.
Okay. What might they be afraid of?
Well, probably most of us heard ghost stories growing up, scary things.
Okay. So they might be afraid of a spirit attack or demon attack or something like
Yeah,
that.
I can't figure out why they're afraid. They should
Well-
just be happy.
Well, I was thinking also, we talk about fear God, and maybe by fear they're meaning that incredible feeling of awe and,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Or
my translation says terror.
oh.
So instead of feeling joyful on behalf of the mother,
Yeah.
they feel afraid of something. They feel awed or overpowered or overwhelmed or scared out of their wits for some. So those are that's what we've looked at here, right?
So what are they afraid of?
I don't mean to be flip.
Go ahead.
But in their culture, they buried them very quickly. Maybe they're, oh my gosh, he's still alive. I mean, maybe.
We should have buried him. Wait a minute, he would have been under the grave dead, alive. Okay,
I
that's
don't know.
interesting.
Well, so that one of the things is you control odor by burying them.
Sure,
So
as well as disease.
yeah, sure. And so there's reasons to bury them, but and they were in a hot climate, depending on the time of year, maybe.
Yes.
We don't know.
Well, let's see.
We don't know what the
time of year
temperature
it?
was, but
It was summer.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it was.
So
it
you
was-
can assume it was warm then.
Oh yeah, I would think so, especially in this area.
Yeah, and then, so, there's a lot of reasons to bury them, but the other thing is, there are a lot of people that are afraid of the dead, and by that I mean,
The zombie apocalypse, yeah.
well, I don't know, I don't know about that, but obviously a dead person can't jump up and get you, but there are a lot of people that do have what I'm going to say is maybe even a beyond rational fear of death.
Well, the Japanese culture, they don't want to live in a house where a person has died because of the spirits involved,
Yes.
because of their ancestral spirits, and they believe that spirit is there. And so they're very cautious about that. That has to be, in other cultures, that spirit has to be driven out of the house.
When we bought our first house in Federal Way in 1975, one of the things the seller had to do was certify no one had died in the house.
Yeah.
That was a legal requirement.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
still is.
Yeah, it still is.
I don't know, I don't remember it when we sold that and bought our new one. But
We are all sensitive to death and what's involved. In these days, especially in those days, and even today, what did the person die of? If the person died of a disease, maybe I'll be catching it. You never know. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be afraid of the dead, corpse, body, whatever, but that's not what's being said here.
in these days, they also didn't know about germs.
That's right. They just knew that typically got to get away from this dead, this unclean thing, because problems have been known to arise around these dead persons, these bodies. Okay? All right, so we're going to have to find out more about this fear thing. This, fear gripped them all, is the way it's translated. And we'll find out more about that. Okay, what else? Anything else strike you?
Was this the first time in Scripture that we show Jesus raising the dead?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking. So it would have taken the apostles by big surprise.
Yes, they would have done that too. Okay, I think it took everybody by surprise. I wonder how Jesus felt about it. He's living by faith,
Yeah.
not by sight.
Yeah.
So if he says it, he believes that the Father will grant it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have any idea where this place is?
No, but
You figure out,
I do know other things happened there.
oh, other things happen. Well, we'll get into that in a little while.
No. Spoil your story.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Jesus went on a journey through Galilee. Okay, now we have to be kind of specific as to where these things are located. Okay? And that we're going to go to this map here briefly. This area up here is Galilee. There's the Sea of Galilee. So this area up here is Galilee. But this area down here, in Old Testament times, this would have been called Israel, the northern tribes. Okay? Judah would be way down here where Jerusalem is, way down to the south. Okay? But in Roman times, this whole area was called Judah.
Or Judea.
Judea, right. So, if you read it here and you think, Judea, but that's way down here. Jesus must be way down here near Jerusalem. But that's not the case. He's up here. Okay, that's important to know. It's in its own way, if you want to care about locations. It'll also tell us where it's going to be anyway, so we're going to have fun with this one. From Capernaum, he traveled southwest past Mount Tabor. Now on this map, you leave the Sea of Galilee, you come down this road here, and there is Mount Tabor. Okay? Now I'm going to show it to you a little up close here. All right, now let me get out of the way. You come down this road here, and you come into this valley area, and there is this lone mountain, Mount Tabor. Okay? And then you just follow along the road, and you go to wherever you want to go. Okay? Mount Tabor. Okay? So you know where it is now, right? We're going to come back to it again and again. Any questions so far? All right. He saw before him the hill of Morah. He's coming down, he passes Tabor, and this is the hill of Morah, right to the south. Okay. Again, as you come down into the valley, there's Mount Tabor, and directly south is the hill of Morah. Okay?
How high is
Yes.
that?
Not very. It's a hill. Okay? I don't know the actual elevation on it, but it's not much. But maybe this will give you an idea of it. Nope. Okay. All right. Let me bring this up. Here you're coming down from Mount Tabor, and before you is this hill. Okay? Called the hill of Morah. Let's not get in there, it's too close. So we're getting close now. He's past Mount Tabor here, sees before him this hill.
Now, is this low enough that they would be able to hike over it?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. I will show you that in a little while. Actually, the physical hill itself.
So for my reference, it'd be like Paris Hill
Yes,
or higher,
Yes.
lower?
a little bit taller. Just off to his left, so remember he's walking south. He's coming down this way. off to his left, with its back to the north face of the hill. Here's the hill. North face is on this side. He's coming down and he's looking to the left. And on the north face of that hill was a walled town called Nain. Now your translation called it a village. It's not appropriate. Because it has walls around for protection, it's a walled town. Or you can call it a city, I'd call it a town. Okay? This is what it looks like today. This is looking south at it. Here it is. And so you could go up over the crest here or over the crest there. And here it is on the north side, the town of Nain.
So
Today.
that terrain looks a lot like maybe the Palouse or an area like that.
Yes, yes. And it's a gentle area. In those times, it was a walled town here, back up inside of this. A walled town. Okay? Any question, thought, or comment? We can come back to this at any time. You just let me know. Okay? Where most people were farmers, a few were herders, and a few were craftsmen. By that I mean working with wood or working with rock or something.
Whatever kinds of things you need for a community.
Correct. So we have a small community here. Okay? And they farm and have orchards around the general area, and you have some goats and sheep and stuff like that.
So they would have been, the funeral procession probably then was outside the city walls, unless he went into the city.
Okay, you're good. So you have the city, we'll just say the city's this big, the
Okay.
town's this big. And it's surrounded by a wall, and there would be a gate here for getting in and out. Okay? That's how you protect it. You have your wall around it, and you try to force most traffic through the gate. Okay? But using that as an image right now. You have a gate looking northward. He's coming south, and he's looking directly at the gate and the town, with the hill right behind it. Okay? Men were expected to do the work. Yeah. It was assumed that women had a man to support them. A father, husband, son, some male person. Women without a male person to care for them faced serious difficulties. There was no government pension, no Social Security, no interest from stocks and bonds. There was not much of anything. At Nain, there was a widow that had one son upon whom she was totally dependent. This is the impression you get from the scripture. Okay? 2 days ago, her only son had died. Not only was her heart broken again, she had lost her husband at some point, but now she had no one to care for her. She would become a beggar among her relatives. She was inconsolable, and those who knew her grieved with her. Any question, thought, or comment about her situation now?
Now, I guess most of us have known or know people or have experienced losing a child in modern times, but and it's devastating. But this is on a whole different scale because this is also your income, your support.
It's everything.
Yeah.
That would put a lot of, she would be afraid, panicked, as well as bereaved of someone she had raised all this time, and probably even liked. You never know. Mothers sometimes like their sons. they say. So there's a lot of emotions happening here, a lot of interaction. Now, what happens with the crowd, the people around her, the people in the funeral procession, her friends? They grieve with her, but did they offer her a place to stay? Are they going to contribute to her support for the rest of her life? What is a friend going to do?
Probably depends on the friend and what means they have.
Yes, it does. And these are just average people barely making it. Remember, they may have had, it sounded like a nice little town there, but they had Roman taxes, they have the religious taxes. Come on, this is not an ideal location in any way, shape, or form. You always have some external pressures. Droughts occur, famines occur, all sorts of things like that. So this is not an easy life. They don't have a nice big bank account. They don't have government aid to help them if there's a problem. This is not an ideal spot. This is going to be difficult for her.
We still have a lot of places like that in some countries.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You could say, boy, you said that definite there.
Well, visit any third world country. I happen to have been in Malawi. There, by all means, yeah. Women lose their husband, they've lost their income. Maybe they can grow a garden or something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Hi, welcome.
And then they have what they call the hungry season.
The hungry season.
The hungry season. That's when their supply of corn has run out, and they're waiting until something new can grow, and may or may not have a flood or a drought.
Wow.
So they have a season in the year they call the hungry season.
So late winter, early spring before the new things
Yeah.
start to grow.
Yeah. Of course, theirs is flipped on its ear because they're in the southern hemisphere compared to us, but same idea.
That's down in Southeast
Yeah.
Africa.
So yes, and I know there's a lot more places than just there.
I'm sure.
That's what I thought.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we're currently in Luke chapter 7. And so the woman, who's a widow, so we know that her husband is no longer in the picture for whatever reason. We'd like to assume he died, but you never know. And she has a son. Now, it doesn't say anything about daughters, because it wasn't important to the story. But she had a son, and that son has died. Okay? And again, just to show you, so that you know, this is what Jesus saw. As he's walking south, he sees the hill of Morah there, and here's the city, the town of Nain. And coming out of the gate here is a procession. Why, isn't that just convenient? That Jesus happened to be there at that precise moment.
Well, depending on the size of the town, it might have been a regular occurrence when somebody dies. I mean, how many funerals do we have in this area in a day?
Well, I'm going to expand this on purpose, so we need to see this. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, no, I better not do that. Okay, so here. Jesus was staying way up here in Capernaum, or Capernaum, as the case may be. Okay? And, let me see, don't we have, got to get off this picture down a little bit. Thank you. Where is there it is, miles. 5 miles right there. So, if that's 5 miles, let's do it this way, Senator. 5 miles. 5, 10, that's almost 15 miles away. That's a fair day hike. If you walk 2 miles per hour at leisurely pace, that's, 7 hours. If you're in a hurry, a little bit more, 3 miles per hour on a dusty road, you can make it in 5. Jesus just happened to be there. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Jesus knew about the death, in my opinion. Yesterday, in Capernaum, Jesus had heard of the death, and he decided to come to Nain, knowing that in the morning there'd be this funeral procession. He decided to do it. Why? I'm pushing you. Okay? It's a rhetorical question at the moment, but I think it's very important because of how it will show up as we get through it. Okay?
Well, it would demonstrate that Jesus had the authority. If you're going to listen to someone, you're going to listen to someone who has authority more easily than you would listen to Joe Homeless guy who may or may not know what he's talking about.
Let me see if I'm reading it correctly. Jesus is in Capernaum. He hears about the death and he says to himself, although I've been telling everybody to shut up, although I heal them, I tell them to shut up afterwards, some of them, or most of them, I'm going to go down there tomorrow morning. I'm going to be there when they have the funeral, because I'm going to raise him from the dead just to show people that I have the authority of God to work with. Right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm speculating.
I understand, but that's what I want. I want speculation. I want to have you consider different thoughts. Okay?
Unless he had an alternative reason to be there that we don't know about.
Yeah. Oh, I think we can come up with one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But I want your thinking as well. That's important. Okay? You've never thought about this before in this way. Okay? So, Jesus is in Capernaum, and he hears about someone comes up for some reason, and because that's how you don't call people on their cell phone, or whatever phones they call them nowadays. You don't text, you go. And somehow someone has gone the 15 miles up to Capernaum, spread the news that this young man has died. I wonder how he died. And people up there spread the word around that their neighbors 15 miles away, a young man has died. It must be a little bit more uncommon to be spread around that way so quickly.
Maybe.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Maybe, So, all right, let's find out. The disciples had known the young man who had come to listen to Jesus teach, in my opinion. If the young man, and please, 15 miles to hear a new preacher in those days, it's more than just entertainment.
It's said many times, people from all
over
the area
came to, yes. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he's a young man and people are talking about the Messiah, that he would go, I want to be interested. I'm going to go up there and find out. And that he would come and visit and listen to Jesus talk. And maybe during the Great Discourse, during that summer. And the disciples have met him, this young man. One of them at least, maybe more. You see how I'm seeing, I believe there's an association there. That this young man was known to either Jesus or the disciples. Okay? Then comes the information, the news that he's died, and they talk among themselves with Jesus there, and Jesus does decide, for some reason, that he's going to go down there for the funeral procession, which would be the following day. So he will leave and start walking early or late to be there when they think the procession will occur. Does this sound somewhat reasonable? Never thought Jesus knew the man, did you?
No.
Go ahead.
I'm so blinkers.
Blinkers. I'm going to stay focused here.
Even though it always says, and they came from all around, never think in terms of, oh, someone else from someplace else might have been up there, and he knew people, probably would have known people all around the
I
area.
think so. They came from all over.
Never done that.
Yeah. So it is I'm going to say it's my opinion that Jesus knew the young man, or at least the disciples knew the young man. Jesus heard about his death and decided, for some reason, to go down there. Because he knew the funeral would be the next day. Because it's summer. Okay? Any thoughts, questions, comments before we go on? You're certainly not reading ahead, are you? Yeah, you are. I know you type.
I was thinking of that, heard it on the grapevine.
Yes, on the grapevine, yeah. Okay. And in those days, they'd carry the grapevine with them. Okay. The body, now we're back to her. Okay, we're back to the town of Nain. The body of her son was wrapped in linen according to the laws and traditions, standard burial procedure. Okay? And was carried out of the town on a stretcher. I'll call it a stretcher, okay? Because we know what those look like, okay? A blanket, 2 poles, and 4 men. Now here's what you do. You lay out the blanket and you put down the poles. You flip one end over, then the other over, put the body on top. The body's weight keeps it from coming apart. And so you can lift it up and you have either 4 or 2 men to carry it out. And it's a simple thing. Okay? That's why I call it a stretcher. Okay? They were taking it out to the cemetery for burial. The cemetery was definitely outside of town. You don't have it in town. Specifically, it would probably be out over here. But mind me, I don't know if they've dug it up in any way, shape, or form. The archaeologists, I have not seen any archaeological study. But if you're coming out the front gate, you're going to somewhere where the cemetery is located. And because people care about cemeteries, I suspect it's back this direction, which is away from traffic. This is where you would want to have your quiet place. This is just a speculation, nothing more, okay? Any thoughts? Okay. As the funeral procession came out through the city gate, let's take a look at it. They come out here through the city gate. Here's a wall. There's a wall. Jesus is already walking over there because he's headed into town. He's headed into Nain. Because he came for this funeral, in my opinion. Okay? Jesus saw the young man's mother, and his chest constricted as he thought of that woman's anguish. Now that's real feeling. You all felt that. Where it goes right here. Gee, he had feelings. He's human. He cares about others.
There's no question he had emotions. We see that over and over.
Right, but most of us see pictures where he's not in emotion at all. You know, he's some kind of God type figure. But he cares. I think he cared because he knew the man, the young man, in some fashion. And he knew the situation because he had been told that by his disciples that she was a widow. And he sees her in her outfit, and I'm sure there's a mourning outfit. Mourning, M-O-U-R, thank you. In her clothes of mourning. And I would just guess that she was crying. and weeping, and that her friends were doing the same thing. They have a tradition of having people wail.
Wail.
I can never pronounce them correctly. W-A-I-L. Even have professional mourners sometimes to make sure that enough people express the feelings that are really there.
You know, I just was thinking, in a sense, he's been through this because Joseph apparently is dead by this time.
His father's long
Now,
gone.
he had younger half-brothers
Yes.
to help her, but, you know, I don't know how old they would have been when he died, so there's,
And Jesus had taken over to support the family. He was the eldest at the very least.
yeah, we don't know how many years he'd been in that position,
Right.
and, you know. So
And
he knew how
Well,
things are.
I mean, this was also standard fare of the day. So, I mean, this is somewhat common scenario.
Oh, sure, but I mean, as a family,
Yeah.
as a member of a family.
yes,
Yeah.
His,
Yeah.
you know,
he would
purported
identify
father has-
with what if I had not been here, what would have happened to my mother.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some of that in there too, because he cared about his mother.
I'd like to draw this back a little bit too, because
Okay.
where we came from in Africa when we visited, the life expectancy there was 32 years, average life.
Wow.
Okay.
So you know that that's modern day. We have antibiotics there. What was it like in Jesus' time?
Yeah, about the same.
Probably, yeah. Certainly short life expectancy. So to have someone lose her husband and then lose her children is probably not a surprise.
No, child mortality was quite high, as well as from war or bandits, people coming in, from others killing people. Yeah, life was short. You die of hunger, you could die of thirst. Oh yes, it's all very uncomfortable. It always has to stay in your mind. So we don't have a totally unusual situation, but what we have is Jesus coming to this funeral for some reason. Okay, here we go. And it's just, this guy is weird. Jesus walked right up and touched the stretcher, swallowed to clear his throat. Remember, he was feeling this. And he told the corpse to arise. Not the young man. You have a dead person here. This is a corpse, not a person. So he told the corpse to arise.
So-
He's got a lot of faith.
So if you walk up and touch a dead body in those days, you were also spiritually unclean.
You're unclean. Yeah, you have to go through this whole ritual and do sacrifices, the whole bit, so that you can be cleansed. That's why on the road, the Samaritan, all this stuff go around this guy. Unclean. So he goes up and he touches either the stretcher or the corpse and says, arise. That shows a lot of faith on Jesus' part. Because remember, he's living by faith also. He is the Son of God, but he's never proved it yet. So he just says, I believe it. Rise. When the young man sat up and said, what happened? He could have had a brain aneurysm, or whatever they call it. He could have been shot, killed, mugged, beat up. He could have died of a disease. We don't know. But I just thought, oh, what happened? This sounded really, yeah. When he did sit up and say that, it scared the 4 men or 2 who immediately sat the stretcher down before they dropped it and backed away.
That would be really freaky.
That would be freaky. Definitely. Okay? If you went to a funeral these days and you went up to the coffin and it was an open casket and you looked in and you were sorry and touched it, because you've touched the casket before, and all of a sudden this body sits up, you're going to back away freaked. Okay? And remember, we know he's dead, because it's been 2 days. This is the second day. And it's important because got to get them in the ground. So they freaked out. They managed to get him down on the ground, and then they backed off, in my opinion. Some of the folks then unwrapped the young man. Because you have, remember, he's all bound up in a linen,
Yeah.
so you have to take that stuff off. Good heavens, this linen sat up.
The mummy.
The mummy, yeah. So they unwrap this to see him, okay? His surprised and grateful mother hugged her son, eventually, and thanked Jesus, in my opinion. It doesn't say it, but that's all right. Okay? All right. Now we have what Jesus intended. Now let's find out why he intended it. Okay?
This is the rest of the story.
The rest of the story. What was his name? Come on, Minnesota?
Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey, thank you. Now for the rest of the story. Some of the people of Nain then recalled their local history and praised God for remembering them by sending another great prophet. See, it says here, fear gripped them all, and they began glorifying God, saying, a great prophet has risen among us. And God has risen. You didn't mention that before, folks, when we were talking about it. Okay? But this is why he came this day to Nain. What prophet were they remembering in their local
Yeah,
history?
you've got Elisha.
Elijah.
Elijah. Not
Elijah and Elisha.
Yeah,
Elisha
Shah.
took over for Jah.
yeah, Shah.
Yeah, Elisha.
The younger one.
Yes, the one who took over. Good. That is correct. Okay. What did they recall? Who was the great prophet they remembered? They recalled how Elisha, and I'm going to bring that up to you. Here's the story of Elisha in that area. And it's a lot of verses. Okay, I'm not going to bother reading it. You can do that on your own. Okay? So let's find out what they were remembering. They recalled how Elisha, the last of the great prophets, had brought back from death the only son of a woman from neighboring Shunem. Now let's go back to that map just briefly. This is important, I think, to understand Jesus more. Let's go here. Please note, on the north side is Nain. Right around the other side is a town called Shunem. Okay? You need to go around or over the top. But Shunem is a real neighbor. This is their next door neighbor. And let's find out then why that is important. This is the town of Shunem, looking northward into the hill. There's the hill of Morah. This is the town of Shunem today. Okay, looking northward. And there's the pass. You go up that pass there, over the hill, and down to Nain.
So are we looking at the original wall on Shunem?
No.
Okay. Just looking at the picture going, huh?
Just looking at the modern town that's been built.
Okay.
Okay, at least not that I know of. Okay, and you can see they do farming here. Okay, Shunem was scarcely a 5-mile walk around the hill of Morah and only a mile and a half over the hill. And so you would come up from Shunem here, up this, to this area, and then down to the right, and you'd be down to Nain. This is the local tradition. They remember how Jesus raised this young man, or this woman, the woman of Shunem. Elisha, 700 years earlier, had raised a son there. My local town. It's right next door. You know, it'd be like the town down just west of here, down the hill, or something, or just south of here. You know?
Grand Falls or something.
Yeah, or even just east, northeast of here. It's a really local thing. And do they remember what happened to them with this great prophet 700 years ago?
Well, it's in the Torah.
Oh yeah, well, it's in that too. But you're going to remember, the townspeople are going to take special pride in that, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to remember that story.
And there's probably, they probably intermarried between the two because it's
Inevitable.
very close. And
Inevitable.
So everybody's got.
I'll meet you up the hill. Okay, we'll see you there. Woo, no. Don't let mom find out. Okay, yes, I'm sure there was a lot of interaction among these local towns like Milton and Osnabrück. So you have a close relation, and everybody will have known the local story. Remember, these things don't change over the years in those days. Okay, you remember the local stuff. So, here, Jesus is using the power of God to help the people of God, and the news will spread like wildfire. Now let me explain what Jesus did. Why did Jesus come down to Nain? Because he wanted to have everybody pay attention to the fact that God is still working. That the tradition of raising someone from the dead at Shunem, and now he's raising someone from the dead at Nain, he's reminding them of the acts of God that had occurred there. And Jesus does this everywhere in his ministry. He purposely goes to a place where God has acted in the past, and he reminds them by acting a certain way in the present time for him. He raises this boy so that people remember the prophet at Shunem, and they remember how God acted toward his people then.
It also just occurred to me that this Elisha's original act that he did, that 700 years earlier, is equivalent to us thinking about something that happened in Martin Luther's time.
Yes.
About the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So
About that.
Yeah.
About 500, but close enough.
yeah, but the point is,
And if you lived 10 miles from Wittenberg,
right?
you remember that story,
You know
whether
the
you were
story.
Roman Catholic or Lutheran or whatever.
Yeah, you know the story.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Local tradition. You've got
Yeah,
that.
we can't do that in this country because we don't have anything that old, but well, very little. But
Well, you could go back and try to,
I'll go to
if
the
you were
East
Native
Coast,
American
but,
here,
yeah.
you might go back to how they used to hunt the seals or the importance of
Yeah.
their totem pole or whatever. And so you have traditions that they remember about their culture.
yeah,
And if Jesus were coming to their culture, he would come there and bring to memory something that happened in their culture at their time,
yeah,
locally. And Jesus will do this again and again and again. He will find, for example, just briefly, if he's going to cure someone of leprosy, he's going to do it in some place where another leper had been healed years before, where God had acted. Okay? You're going to see it, and this is the story that really turned me around. Okay? Because I realized that Jesus would go to places where God had acted in order to recall to them God's acting now. How God has acted for his people then, he is acting for his people now. And he will do this again and again and again, and we'll see it again and again and again.
makes
Any
it real.
further, go ahead.
Just that would make it more real for people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, very much so. And that's why it would spread like wildfire. Another prophet has arrived. He was only 5 miles away where the great prophet was. Wow, we've got double hits. We're double blessed. Yeah, and yeah, if him clearing up somebody's acne was big news, this is bigger. And it's all focused on God acting, not Jesus, God acting. He's doing it so people recall how God acted toward his people.
hence the prophet rather than the Messiah for the reactions of the people.
Correct. And the people, what they see then is, if he can raise this one from the dead, if I go fight for him, this will be later, if I get killed in battle, he'll just raise me up and I'll do it again. So they'll want this Messiah dude. This is part of it, and he'll feed all his troops easily, you know, that kind of. So we'll get into that later. But mostly it's, he uses a local event that God had acted locally, and he's going to remind them of that by acting himself.
And then, of course, it also fulfills prophecies of what the Messiah would do.
Yeah, we're near Naphtali, so it's pretty close in there too. Naphtali's up there. And so they'll see a great light. Okay. Anything else? Well, then next week, next time we get together, John the Baptist is going to send someone to question Jesus. We'll find out about that.